Well, thank you. Thank you very much. My goodness, I was here about this time last year and came to talk to you a little bit about government. And I understand y'all are studying what now? Is this a math class?
No.
It's not. What is it?
Social studies.
Social studies. Oh my goodness. I thought this was the math class. I'm going to have to back up and regroup a little bit, aren't I? Well, social studies. Well, before I start, tell me a little bit about social studies. What is that? What do you study? Who'd like to tell me? Yes, sir. Government. Okay. In social studies, you study government and how government works and what does it do. Well, first of all, before we talk about government, and I talk a little bit about what I do and what government is, who'd like to tell me what is government? Yes, ma'am.
Government, you take care of the state.
You take care of the state. Okay, what else? What would happen if we didn't have government? Yes, ma'am.
Everybody would be free to do whatever they wanted to and would get in an awful lot of trouble.
Where'd Miss Kara go? She told me this was a smart class, and you are right. That's exactly right. If we didn't have government, and what is government? Government is a group of people that have rules, ordinances, and laws that govern us. They govern our communities, our societies on how we should do. And some of these things are more commonly called laws. Does anybody know about law? Yes, ma'am.
Law is like rules that you have to follow at school, except you have to do them outside of school and inside of school.
You have some very bright students. In case you couldn't hear her, she said laws are rules outside of school that help tell us what to do and how we should do and what not to do, right? And that is exactly correct. And without those laws or rules, or in the city we call them ordinances, we would have something called anarchy. Anybody know what anarchy is? Yes, sir. What is anarchy?
Anarchy is like chaos, and
You're exactly right. It's chaos. Chaos, or you may call it mob rule. And you don't have organization, and mobs rule. And you don't have protection for the community. You don't have order. So that's why we have government. We have our government that gives us a set order of rules and laws and ordinances that help us know what we should do and shouldn't do outside of school, right? So that's the purpose of government. It gives us guidelines, it gives us rules, it gives us ordinances so that we can have a more orderly society. Because who would like to see mob rule? We don't want that, do we? Or anarchy, because as the young man back there said, that would give us chaos. And we don't want that. We want to be able to come to school, not have roving bands of people out there that want to maybe take our car or take our tennis shoes or something like that. And we won't do that today. But that helps us. So, that being said, we have a little bit better understanding, or y'all already know what government's for. So, how about our local government? What does our local government do? How does it function? First of all, we have a city council, and I'm the mayor, so
It like helps us run like the local stuff, like fire department and police department.
That's exactly right. Our city council and our local board of commissioners help run our local government. And our local government deals with things like fire protection, police protection, paving our roads, keeping them in order. How about it got cold this morning, didn't it? Who got cold this morning? I saw a young man, there he is. I'm going to see if I can borrow his jacket before I leave here. because he's got a warm jacket on to be able to stay warm. But what if, as cold as it got, we had a little moisture and had a little snow and ice and the streets got iced over? How would you get to school?
School would be closed.
It'd be y'all don't close school when the streets ice over, do you? So,
Try not to.
but the streets would be iced over. Who gets the ice off of those streets? Who? Yes, ma'am.
The people that work for the government.
The people that work for the government. That's where your city and county and state come in, because they help clear the streets, get the ice and the debris off the streets, or a tornado or some bad weather comes in and you see trees that fall on the streets and on buildings. Well, you see crews out there working to clear those streets, and those are a lot of times crews from your city, county, and state government, because they're providing security and safety for you, your families, and your community. So, how about police protection? Anybody in here know any police officers? Who do you?
My aunt was a detective.
You're what?
My aunt was a detective.
She was? Who do you know?
My uncle.
Your uncle. How about you, young man?
My uncle.
Your uncle? Yes, ma'am.
My cousin.
Your Yes, ma'am.
My mom.
Your mom. Is she a police officer? Where? City? County? In the city. Okay, so she's one of our police officers. Yes, sir.
My mom's friend.
Your mom's friend? How about you?
My mom's friend too.
You're what?
His name is Jeff. My mom's friend too.
Jeff. Okay. Who do you know?
My papa.
He's a police officer?
Mm-hmm.
Does he work for the city or the county or the state?
I don't really know.
Okay. Well, when you go home, ask him who he works for. Almost just about everybody in here knows somebody that's a police officer. So now, what do those police officers do? Yes, ma'am.
My dad's a detective police officer. He's a train investigator. Well, he makes sure that nobody gets on the train and steals stuff off of it.
Very good. But you've met him, all right. But what do these police officers do day to day? Yes, sir.
Protect the city?
They protect us. That is correct. And we have city, state, county, federal, and then we also have security officers or police officers that work for the people that run the trains. Because what they do is provide safety and security for us. But who employs them? The government, city, county, state. And that's back to what we talked about as far as government helping keep us safe through order and rules and organization. How about fire safety? Yes, ma'am.
My uncle.
Your uncle, is he a fireman? Very good.
My cousin.
Your cousin?
My grandmother's friend.
Your grandmother's friend?
Someone in my church went to feed named Robert.
Okay. So, firemen, they provide safety and security for us when we have fires. So, again, that's a part of that government process. How about, we've talked about roads, we've talked about safety. How about, let me ask you a question. Who in here put some garbage in the garbage can this morning? Almost everybody. Well, who, do y'all pick it up every day? Where does it go? It goes where? To the dump? Who gets it to the dump? Yes, sir.
The garbage man.
The garbage man. Who does he work for?
The government.
Well, with the garbage collection, we have two things. If you live within the city picks up. Does anybody live in the city? You have one of those little rolling brown cans that you put your garbage in? Okay. The city comes on a regular basis, picks up that garbage, takes it to the dump. So you see, there's a lot of things that the government does to help provide order, safety, and security for our local communities. But there's several different forms of government. We have city, county, state, and federal. Now, what different, well, let's say with our state government, there's branches of government. Who knows anything about that? Yes, ma'am.
Like the judicial branch where they get the laws and see like maybe.
Well, let me tell you, with the state and federal, in the way government is, you have it broken up into different groups. You have your legislative group, you have your executive branch, you have your judicial branch. Are y'all familiar with that? Have you studied that?
Yes.
You getting there? Okay. Well, now, why would you have different branches of government within the government? Why is that? Yes, sir.
So, like, one person doesn't, like, one government doesn't run everything. Like, there's different sections that run different things.
It's called checks and balances. Have y'all studied that yet? Not yet. You have checks and balances so that, and like this gentleman said, no one person is controlling everything. If you have one person that controls everything, what would you call that? Yes, sir.
A dictator.
Y'all have some very, very, how did y'all get so smart? Yes, ma'am. Books. Books, reading, studying. How about your teachers? I'm going to help you with that. Your teachers. Think about that. Your teachers, what they do to help you learn. Because if you don't learn, what happens? Yes, ma'am.
You won't get through in life.
I may get y'all to come help me run the city. How about that? Think we could get some of y'all to come help do that? Yeah, okay. Well, it's very important that we have the government that we have that has the different branches of the government so that we don't have a dictatorship or kings. Do we have kings in America? Do we have a dictatorship? No. We have those checks and balances. We have the executive branch, we have the legislative branch, and we have the judiciary. Right now, what's going on down at the state capitol? Does anybody know?
They're having meetings.
They're having meetings, you're right. They're having a lot of them. Yes, sir. Their work. Well, let me tell you what's going on. The legislature is in session. It meets for about 3 months, or really 40 days. They meet 40 days, and one of the things that they're required to do is have a balanced budget. And they're down there right now working on the budget for how they're going to spend money to provide some of the things that we talked about: safety, security, and protection for our local and state communities. Now, down there, we have the governor, we have the two houses, we have the Senate and the House of Representatives, and they're meeting, working together on laws and budget that will help govern and run our state. Now, that also goes on at the federal level, but we don't even want to go there right now. But at our local level, let's talk a little bit about the local level, because that's what I do and have experience in and operate on a day-to-day basis. If you talk about the different forms of government within the local city, would we have that same checks and balances, or are we able to have a dictatorship? Do I get to be the dictator? No. How about king? No. Why? Why?
Because people vote for the leaders in America.
Very good. You're right. People vote. And that's one of the greatest things in our country, and that's one of the greatest things about our America and our form of government is how we select the people that are going to run our government to deal with the laws that we talked about and the ordinances and the rules that govern our lives. We don't have a dictatorship. We don't have kings. We have a very structured form of government that belongs to who? Who does it belong to? We've talked a little bit about government. Who does it belong to? Does it belong to me? No. Does it belong to your teachers? No. Who does it belong to? Let me tell you, this is very important. It belongs to you. It belongs to the people. Never, 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 ever forget that. The government belongs to you. You own it. And you are able to select by voting who will represent you in this form of government that we have. It's one of the greatest forms of government that there is. And how did we get it? Did it just happen? Yes, ma'am.
We voted for you?
I hope you did. And if you didn't, please do next time. How did we get this form of government that we have? And I guess y'all studied the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and
just got done having a unit about Greece where we talked about the different kinds of democracies and how they reflect what we do in our country today.
okay.
Just got done talking about that.
The different forms of democracies and how we do today, and I don't want to get too far out there. But know and understand, if you don't take anything else away from today, that this form of government and this democracy and democratic form that we have is, well, let's go back to something else. Has anybody heard about the word freedom? What does freedom mean? What does freedom mean?
Freedom means like you're free to do what you want, but you still have to follow the rules.
You're free to do what you want to, but you still have to follow the rules. One of the things I say on a regular basis is freedom really is a misnomer. It really is. Because there's nothing free about it. When we talk about freedom, we talk about the ability to be able to exercise what we would like to do as long as we stay within certain rules and guidelines and laws so that we have order and we don't have chaos. But that's freedom. And it's not free. Because you see, the form of government that we have and your ability to be able to vote and select your leaders, people like me, that are instrumental in setting the laws and governing our communities, you get to pick. You get to select, or your parents do. But one day you will be able to. And never forget that ability to be able to vote and select the leaders that will represent you is not free. Because you see, people have fought and died many, many years to be able to allow us to have that freedom, to have the government that we have, that you're studying, and that I believe you're going to study more about. Okay. So, and I wish when I was your age, I would have had a better understanding about what government is. And you're very fortunate to have the teachers that you have that are helping you learn and understand how our government works. Because you see, it's a very important thing. Because without it, like the gentleman said over there a little earlier, the young man, we'd have chaos. And if you're studying a little bit more about government and how some other governments are run in other parts of the world right now today, as we're speaking and talking, they have chaos. They don't have the safety and security that you have. They don't have the teachers that you have that are working with you to help you learn so that you'll become better students and be able to do better and grow up and excel and get the opportunities that are afforded you in this great country that we have. So you see, you're not just studying about government. You're really studying about life. Because you see, government's a very important part of our lives, and it's very important that we have the right government, and it's very important that we have the right people running our government. Because you see, it is ours. And one day you are going to get to select who runs it. So, what I do, I'm the mayor. We have a city council. We have 7 council members. I am the executive branch of our government. Our city council members are the legislative branch of our government. And then we also have a judiciary. And I'm not going to ask anybody in here if your parent, certainly you haven't because you can't drive yet, has ever gotten a ticket for maybe driving a little too fast or parking where they shouldn't have. But if that happens within the city, you'll go to we have a municipal court. So we have a judiciary also. But as the mayor and our city council, we have 7 members of those, we do the laws that affect you as a community. The laws, the ordinances, and the rules that help govern what you do outside of. How much time? Okay. Why don't we do this? I've told you a little bit. We've defined what government is. We've talked about some of the different forms of government. We've talked about why we have government. We don't want chaos. We don't want anarchy. We want a governed, structured, orderly form of government so that our communities function and work well. Right? Okay. Questions?
Yep, Mr. Mayor, I have some of our friends. We worked really hard on coming up with some questions for you, and they've got cards and everything. So can we have them ask you some specific questions?
Sure.
What you do?
Sure.
Some of my friends' cards. When I point to you, I want you to stand up and.
Now, these questions I'm going to be able to answer.
Well, we got some cue cards in the back.
Okay.
For you.
Because this is a very smart group of young people.
When I call on you, I want you to stand up and tell the mayor your name, and then ask him your question, okay? I want you to ask that one. And Henry, I'm going to want you to ask that. So, okay, who do I give a card to? Let me see your hands. All right, young man in the back. On you. What your name is?
Caleb Partridge.
Well, first of all, what's your name, young man?
Caleb Partridge.
Caleb?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
If you go out of town, do you have a backup mayor?
If I go out of town, do I have a backup mayor? Very good question. We have something called a mayor pro tem. The mayor pro tem is elected by the 7, well, he would really be elected by the other 6 because he's one of the 7. He is chosen and selected by the city council members, and he's called the mayor pro tem. The only thing that the mayor pro tem is allowed to do is if I am out of town or sick and unable to conduct the meetings, then he would step in and fill that role to conduct our meetings and execute the business during those meetings. So, very good question.
Okay. Guys with a card, raise your hand, and the mayor will call on you.
Yes, ma'am. Tell me your name, please.
Olivia.
Olivia. Okay, go ahead.
Is it hard to work on one thing and another at the same time?
Very good question. Olivia, I guess what you're asking is, can I multitask? With this job, if you don't or can't multitask, you'd be in trouble. Because, and maybe somebody's going to ask, well, what do you do? And if they do, then we'll get into that. But you do have to multitask. You do have to do a lot of different things at one time. Bless you. Because this job every day is a little different. And every day we're looking at different issues, different opportunities, if you will, and things that we do. So, yes, you do have to be able to work on more than one thing at a time. Now, whether or not I do a good job of that, you might would need to ask other people, and you'd probably get different views on how well I do that. So, but I do it and have to on a regular basis. Thank you, Olivia. Who else? Yes, ma'am. What's your name?
Maya,
Maya?
what is the hardest job you do?
That's a tough question. What is the hardest thing that I do? Maya, there are a lot of things that, when I say are difficult with this job, but there's a lot of different issues that we deal with on a regular basis. And these are issues that affect people's lives as it relates to issues of zoning and the different rules and laws that we establish. So I would say one of the most difficult things is having a good perspective on those rules and ordinances and things that affect people's lives, because you want to make sure that you get it right. And so you want to be very deliberate about it. You want to think it through, because like I said, we make decisions that affect our communities, that affect your lives, and affect your parents' lives. So that's probably one of the most difficult things, to make sure that we think it through and get it right, because we want to do it right. Yes, sir. Thank you, Ma.
Ryan.
What's your name?
Ryan,
Ryan? My grandson's name, Ryan.
what are your 3 goals for Douglasville?
What are what?
Your 3 goals for Douglasville.
How much time you got? Ryan wanted to know what are my 3 goals for Douglasville. I'm getting ready to do the State of the City speech next week, and in that are some of the goals and things, and I outline them. One of the things that I ran on was, and I guess this is the overall guiding goal, was that I want to help, and notice I said help. I didn't say make, because by myself, I'm not going to make Douglasville anything. I want to help make Douglasville be one of the premier places in America to live, work, play, raise a family, and be able to do all of that in a safe community. So those goals, and you talk about what are the 3, those goals fit within that. We want to make sure that we have a safe community. We want to make sure that we have a good, solid police department, that you can be protected against the bad guys that want to come into our community. We want to make sure that we are able to attract businesses to come into our community. But not just businesses. You hear, some of you may hear talk about economic development, jobs. Let's bring jobs in so you can go to work or your families can have good jobs. But that's the thing, we want to make sure that we attract the right companies that bring good jobs, high-paying jobs, and they have the right values that we have as a community, because we want to make sure they're good business partners, because we want to make sure that those companies are good companies, so as you get older, you won't have to leave to go to work somewhere else. You can work here. And then another one of the goals is fiscal stability. I want to make sure that we have a sound, strong, fiscally responsible government. Anybody in here get an allowance? Gosh. Do any of you save some of that allowance, or you just go out and spend all of it every day? Very good. Looks like we may have some good frugal students in here. Well, see, we at the city are the same way. We get monies that come in, and we want to make sure that we're good stewards of those monies. And we want to make sure that we spend it responsibly so that we are fiscally stable and we're able to continue every day, every month, every year to provide you and your families with those services that we talked about. So it's very critical that we do just like you do. We manage our monies. Let me ask you a question before we go any farther. The monies that we get, where does it come from? Yes, sir.
From the city?
The money that the city gets to run the government, where does it come from?
Oh, then
Very good. Comes from the people. Comes from the people that pay. Anybody hear anything about taxes? Teachers, y'all have done very well. Miss Carol, Mr. Moran, you've got some very bright individuals, and I'm sure that y'all had a key role in helping them learn that. Comes from the people. So the people pay taxes, businesses pay taxes, and we get that money. Is it ours? It's not. That money's not ours. We can't do what we want to do with it. I can't go on trips with it and take vacation, and I can't. Why? Huh? Why? Why can't I?
Because if you do, that would take the money from the people which they paid for their taxes.
You're exactly right. You see, that money belongs, even though we get it in as taxes and revenues, it's not ours. It really isn't. It belongs to you. It belongs to your parents. It belongs to our taxpayers. And to answer that question, what one of my goals is to make sure that we're good stewards of that money. Because you see, it's not ours. It belongs to each and every one of you, your parents, and the citizens and the businesses in Douglasville. So that is one of my primary goals, is to make sure that that money we take in, we're good stewards of it, we spend it properly so that we can help take care of our communities. Because you see, if we don't do that, we can't provide those services that we initially talked to you, or I initially talked to you about, that provide good government and keep us from being in chaos and having anarchy. So that's one of the primary goals. And then those other goals fit within that. Who else has a question? Thank you, Ryan. Yes, ma'am. Abby, let me see, Abby. What's your last name? Knowles. I know somebody named Knowles. Who is that guy? Is it Jeff Knowles? Do you know him? Where do you know him from? He's your dad. I thought he was your daddy. You see, I know Abby. Abby's been up to my office, and we get to talk once in a while, don't we? Okay. Tell me your question, Abby.
What is the hardest thing about being the mayor?
Nothing. Abby asked, what is the hardest thing about being the mayor? Thank you for that, Abby. Probably one of the hardest things about being mayor is providing the right leadership that gets people to work together. That's probably, and that's a great question. Because you see, within communities, whether it be city, state, or federal, we have different views and different ideas on how our government should be run. Some people think we ought to do this. Somebody thinks we ought to do this. Somebody thinks we ought to do this. But y'all probably don't have that here at school. Everybody just works together and wants to do the same thing, and everybody agrees. And if your teachers tell you to do this, everybody always agrees and everybody always does what they're supposed to. Is that right? Not all the time. No, now tell me that's not so. I thought if Mr. Moran and Miss Carol told y'all to do something or wanted to go in a certain direction, that everybody just agreed and we all did that and everybody was happy. Is that right? No. It doesn't work that way? No. Well, it doesn't work that way within government. And that's probably one of the most difficult things, is to work with the people and the communities and get people working together for a common goal, a common objective, and a common end. And that question, that's one of the things that I campaigned on. For you see, I said when I was campaigning, we have a little group over here wanting to do this, a little group over here wanting to do this, another group over here wanting to do this. And they all have good ideas. They all want to do the right thing. But how you best get it to all work together is when everybody comes together and works together for that common end, that common goal, and that common objective, just like y'all have. Really, the common goal and the common objective, I think, here is to get you a good education, to get you to learn, to get you to be bright, to get you to understand what goes on so that you can then go on to be a better person, grow up to be an adult, and become a good, productive citizen. That's the overall long-term goal and objective. Now, we have a little different ideas on how we get there, right? But that's what your teachers work to do every day, to kind of get everybody focused and get everybody working together to go in that common direction. And Mr. Moran and Miss Carol, that's an easy job, isn't it? So you see, Abby, when you ask that question, what's one of the most difficult, that's probably the most difficult thing. But I look at it not as being a difficult thing, but a challenge to get people to work together for that common goal and that common objective, which is to help make Douglasville and Douglas County be one of the premier places in America to live, work, play, raise our families, and have a safe community doing that. Thank you, Abby. And let me say this, Abby's dad, I was picking at her a little bit initially, but her dad, Jeff Knowles, does a great job for the city of Douglasville, and he's over our economic development group. He's our economic development director and does a great job. As a matter of fact, in my State of the City speech, I'm going to talk about some of the companies that we've been able to attract and bring to Douglasville that bring jobs to our community and the economic development. So her dad does a great job. We're very glad to have him, and I get to work with him on a daily basis. And I get to see Abby once in a while too. So thank you for that question. Okay, who else? Yes, sir.
My name's Henry.
Henry? I've got a grandson named Henry. All of y'all are named after my grandkids. How'd that happen? What's your question, Henry?
How do you handle everybody in the city?
How do I handle them? Politely. How do I handle everybody in the city? One of the things that I've found that the best way that you deal with people is to be polite, is to be courteous, and to work with them and try to understand where they're coming from. Because you see, everybody in here doesn't think alike, or do they? Does everybody in here think alike?
No.
You're kidding. Everybody doesn't have the same thought process?
No.
Everybody doesn't want to do the same thing every day? Why? Why?
Because everybody has their own opinion and thought.
No, say it's not so. It is so. Everybody has different thoughts, different opinions, and different ways that they think that we should function on just about anything. Why? Because we're all different. God created all of us differently, with individual minds and thought processes on how we should do. So, how do you deal with that? You work with people and try to understand where they're coming from. Try to understand what they're saying. Understand what their ideas are. Because you see, believe this or not, I'm not always right. I have to listen to a lot of different people and form an opinion based on some of what I'm hearing. Now, I have a very set of beliefs and values and things that don't compromise on. But on how we get to a certain place or a certain direction that we take getting there, takes a lot of people working together to formulate that. So how I work with people is listen to what they have to say, try to understand what they're saying, and understand where they're coming from in saying it. And if you do that with most people and you're courteous and try to be understanding, that works most of the time with most people. So that's how I do it. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you, Henry. All right. Yes, sir.
I have a question. I'm Mr. Moran.
I was going to say, can I get your name, please?
So, now, when I was growing up, I wanted to be center fielder for Cubs. That didn't necessarily pan out, so I ended up becoming a teacher. My question for you, and you may have touched on this a little bit, when did you decide you wanted to be a mayor, and probably most importantly, why was it important for you to become a mayor? Why did you want to do that?
When I was 2 years old, laying in the crib one day, I thought, you know, I think I want to be mayor one day. Who believes that? Well, let me say this. First of all, when I was laying in that crib at 2 years old one day, and it was all warm, and I had my little blanket, and I was all snuggled up, laying there, I really can't tell you what I was thinking. Because you see, my memory's really not that good. But to answer your question, Mr. Moran, when did I decide that I wanted to become mayor? First of all, I decided probably 30 years ago. Now you're thinking, well, he doesn't even look 30 years old. But I'm a little more than 30, believe me. But about 30 years ago, I decided and realized that I needed to become more involved in the government process. Prior to that, I was very involved in business and very involved, which I've always been very involved with my family. But I got more involved and more engaged in government and the process and how it works. And as a result of that, I spent almost 7 years on the city council as a city council person back several years ago. I chaired the city's zoning board for 5 years. I was on the county's zoning board for the better part of 7 years and was the vice chairman of that board for almost 5 years. I've been involved in a lot of different political campaigns, both at the city, the state, county, and federal level over those 30 years. So I was involved in the process because, you see, the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. But for that to play out and work, people have to be engaged. They have to be involved. And so I chose to be involved roughly 30 years ago. But to answer your question, at what point did I decide to become mayor? When I was involved over those years, I wanted to be engaged, first of all. But then when I was on the council almost 20 years ago, I wanted to be mayor then, but I didn't have the time because I was participating in the local process, but also was making a living with another job. So I thought about it then, and it's something that I've been thinking about for probably the better part of 20 years. I was fortunate enough to be able to retire a few years ago and had been involved in, like I said, a lot of different campaigns, and started looking at how did I get back involved and engaged at an elected capacity within the city. Because, see, I've lived in Douglasville, in the city, for almost 37 years. So probably a couple of years before I actually decided to run, but then there were some things that had to take place that I had to do to kind of get in order to allow me to be able to do it. Because one of the questions that you hear and that comes up periodically, is this a full-time or a part-time job? Does anybody know? Is it? What is it? Full-time? There's nothing in our city charter or in any other document that defines whether or not the mayor's job is full-time or part-time. What it does do is it says that I, as mayor, am the chief executive officer for the city. And it goes on to lay out some of the things that I'm responsible for. Now, can that be done full-time? Can it be done part-time? And that's up for me to decide. And to me, the deciding factor is to get the job done. And I'm going to get the job done whether it takes 2 hours a day or 20 hours a day. And I hadn't mentioned, but I'll mention our cameraman back there, Steve Jones, who was nice enough, and they get up sometimes early in the mornings to follow me around so that we can get on camera, not for me to get on camera, but to get you on camera, to get your teachers on camera, to get your school on camera, so that we can put out to our community what's going on in our community. So you see, he's not here just to film me, because you see, it's not about me. It's about you. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to run for mayor. Because you see, I very much believe in this government process that we have and what it's about. And it's about you. And when I got here this morning, people thanked me for coming and thanked me for taking my time. But you see, really who I need to be thanking is you. For being here, for being attentive, for wanting to learn how the process works, and your teachers for what they do. Because you see, Mr. Moran said he wanted to be an outfielder for the Cubs. But then he didn't, and he became a teacher. And when he said that, I was thinking, you know, where does he make the bigger difference? Where does he make the greater impact? Yeah, if he'd have been maybe an outfielder for the Cubs, I don't know, you may have been making a little bit more money.
A little more difference for the Cubs.
Huh?
Maybe a little more difference.
A little more difference for the Cubs. Yeah. But really, at the end of the day, how many different lives would you have affected and changed and made a difference in? And you see, that's what it's really all about. There's a saying that to whom much is given, much is expected. And each and every one of you, I can tell by listening to you, watching you being attentive, you're very bright, you're very fortunate, and you're very blessed. So I challenge each and every one of you to be able to give back. So, in answer to your question, and I said a lot, but I'll come back to it. It's a thought process I've had for a long time because I've wanted to be engaged, wanted to give back, want to participate in this government that I very, very, very much believe in. Because you see, it's one of the great, it's the greatest government on the face of this planet. It's not perfect, but then none of us are. And you see, our government is a combination of a lot of different people working together, hopefully, to that common end and that common goal, and that's so that we have good, safe communities. And you can be afforded a good, safe education so that one day you too can give back. You can be a Mr. Moran, a Miss Kara, and help other young people learn, be bright, and go on. And you see, the process just continues. So I know you may have missed being a ball player for the Cubs, but I applaud you and Miss Kara and all the others for what you do, because see, what you do and give is very important, and we appreciate what you do. Anybody else? How are we running for time?
The mayor's got a busy schedule. So
No, okay, I don't want to take up more time than y'all have got, because you see, what you do is very important. I have a lot going on, but you have a lot going on. And I applaud you, because I can tell you're bright, you're attentive. And probably in this room, we may have an outfielder for the Cubs. Or we may have another Mr. Moran or Miss Kara, or a president, or a governor, or a state senator, or a doctor, or a scientist sitting right here in this room. But it's up to you. Who else? Yes, ma'am. What's your name? Lily, okay.
What school did you go to learn how to become a governor?
A mayor? What school? Is anybody familiar with the School of Hard Knocks? Lily wanted to know what school I went to learn to be mayor. I don't know that there really is a school per se that you can go to and say, I want that class in learning to be a mayor. Because you see, it's a combination of a lot of different things. It's learning to be good social studies students. It's learning about the government process. It's being involved in your community, learning what people want, learning how the process works. There's a lot of things that I've done along the way to get me to this point that helped me in my job as mayor. But there's no one school that you can per se go to say that I want to take those courses so that I can become mayor. Now, you can go on to college and major in certain things that may give you a little better understanding of how the process works that would then help you better. But where I went to school, they didn't have any mayoring classes, if you will. But so does that help? Thank you, Lily.
How about one more?
One more? Okay. Mr. Moran, I'm going to let you pick. Which one? Or Miss Kara?
What Miss Carol pick?
Corey. Do you ever get to see, after a busy day,
Now, your name is
Corey,
Corey, okay.
after a busy day, do you ever get to spend time with your family?
That's an excellent question, Corey. Corey asked, after a busy day, do I get to spend time with my family? First of all, that's about priorities. And what are your priorities? And what are my priorities? And I say this on a regular basis. Regardless of what you're doing, whether it's being a student, being a teacher, being the mayor, being the governor, being the president, whatever, if you get so busy and lose sight of what's important, you've got your priorities and your perspective out of order. So one of the things that I make sure that I do is have time and spend time with my family. So you say, how do you do that? Well, I'm a pretty structured, regimented kind of person in that I have a calendar. And on that calendar, you'll see where, and it's pretty full, where I make time to do things. But I also make sure with my priority, which is my family, that I schedule and make sure that there's time in there to spend that time. Whether it be with my grandkids, my kids, my wife, or the rest of my family. Because you see, it's very important that you spend time with your family. So, I do spend time with them. I make sure that I do. I schedule it and I prioritize it. Because you see what I do, as mayor, I feel like it's very important. But if I get so consumed with being mayor that I don't take time for my family, my friends, my spiritual growth, and I got my priorities out of order. But it's a day-to-day, I don't want to say struggle, but it's a day-to-day issue to make sure that you do that on a regular basis. Because your family, your spiritual growth, and who you are as a person is all grounded in that. So I do take time to do that. And I'm very cognizant of that fact. Anybody else? Let me say this in closing. First of all, I'd like to, y'all thanked me for coming. I'd like to thank you for letting me come. Because you see, to that question, if I'm ever think I'm too busy in running the business to come and spend time with, you're our future leaders. And this is one of the things that I enjoy most about the job, is getting to come and talk to you and see you and listen to you and know and have faith that our future is bright. Because you see, you're our future. and Miss Kara and Mr. Moran are making that happen. And like I said, what we see in here, there's some mayors in here, or a president, or a doctor, or a state senator, or maybe even a president. And you can make it happen. So to be able to come and spend time with you and see how attentive you've been and see how bright you've been is exciting for me and very enjoyable. So I thank you. I thank you, teachers. And from what I've seen and what I've heard, they're doing a pretty good job. What do y'all think? Let's give them an applause.
And while we're at it, what we tell the mayor for coming and seeing us and giving us all this great information today.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day, and I would like to thank our cameraman back there, Steve Jones. And how many people are familiar with City TV? Wow. Go on City TV, Channel 22, and we're going to put this out there on City TV for you to be able to watch. Because you see, like I said, it's not about me. That's not why we're here to do this. It's about you. It's about your school. It's about your teachers. It's to really let the community know what's going on within our community and that we have a great community. So thank you for letting me be here, and look to see you soon. Have a great day.